Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox, and I would like to welcome you to a special 5-part podcast series sponsored by Exiger on From Third-Party Risk Management to Supply Chain Risk Management. Exiger on the evolution of supplier compliance in COVID-19. First, a word about Exiger. Exiger was founded to fight financial crime, fraud, and terrorist financing by introducing technology-enabled solutions to the market's biggest supply chain, risk, investigation, litigation, and compliance challenges. Global authority on risk and compliance, Exiger services on the world's largest banks, Fortune 1000 companies, and government agencies and regulators. Exiger combines frontline expertise of former prosecutors, intel analysts, Department of Defense veterans, and compliance officers, leading technologists and forensic accountants with cutting-edge, fit-for-purpose artificial intelligence technology. In recognition of the growing volume and complexity of data and regulations, Exiger is committed to working with clients to create a more sustainable risk management environment through its holistic and innovative approach to problem solving. To find out how Exiger is making the world a safer place and more effective place to do business, visit Exiger.com or reach out to any of the experts featured in this week's podcast series. Over this 5-part podcast series, we will put a spotlight on financial institutions with Tara Loftus and Summer Pratt. We will put a spotlight on corporations with Aaron Narva and Ren McEachern. We will put a spotlight on federal government and supply chains with Carrie Wibben and Vishnu Anatamula. We will look at the pillars of good compliance with Brandon Daniels and Carrie Wibben. We will conclude with third-party risk management solutions with Erica Peters and Skylar Chi. In this episode, I'm joined by Ren McEachern, who focuses on leading anti-bribery investigations and assisting multinational corporations with regulatory risk management, and Aaron Narva, head of corporate markets, who leads the development and delivery of Exiger's purpose-built AI-powered solutions for anti-bribery and corruption compliance. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, back for our second episode. Today, we're going to take a look at corporations with Ren McEachern and Aaron Narva. Gentlemen, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
Thanks, Tom. Good to speak with you again.
Ren, one of the things that had been percolating along and has been greatly accelerated, I think, by the coronavirus health crisis has been corporations having to reconsider a risk-based approach to third parties. So I wanted to get from your perspective, what are some of the major impacts to this approach that we have used in the past and may need to change in the future?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Tom. And during my time at the FBI working with the Department of Justice and SEC, third-party risk was a major problem, well over 80% as a catalyst for getting companies in trouble. And so it's gotten even more challenging under the COVID crisis. I actually think there should be almost a new label for third parties during this. It's called COVID third parties because of the challenges truly understanding third parties and to make sure they fit into that risk-based approach, which is so critical for assessing. The challenges really are about the fact that the business is having to move so quickly into distribution channels, other partnerships, and depend on vendors. They may not have the time to really do the required diligence under a risk-based program, and they're having to onboard these companies quickly and enter into industries that they may not be that familiar with. And so that puts the company at a disadvantage, as you can imagine, when they want to say, okay, I really understand who the partner is. I understand who the people are behind the partnership. I understand my third party and their existence in places that may be geopolitically hot right now, as we all know, with everything going around the globe as a result of COVID. There's lots of other tangents that can affect third parties when it comes to things like trade discussions. All of this is to say that whenever you're onboarding a third party during these really challenging times, number one, are you able to apply the normal risk assessments that would be required? And are they labeled differently? Do you keep them in a separate bucket so that when we get back to whatever our new normal looks like, that they're being reassessed a little bit differently than the normal third parties you would have maybe brought on before that. Lastly, I would say most importantly is about being proactive. This is a critical element with third parties now more than ever. Data is always increasing around third parties. It's increasing within the business. Be able to monitor data points associated with third parties will give you a big advantage. And it's also a sign of a mature program, one that monitors. So thanks for that question, Tom.
Aaron, I've heard you use the phrase risks at the margin. And I wanted to focus on that for a minute to ask you, why are risks at the margin so much more challenging, yet can lead to, in many ways, a more overall effective risk management program?
Right. Thanks, Tom. I think it's important for us to define margins a little bit here. With the increased scrutiny with which corporations are managing risk, right, specifically in the areas of third-party risk, conflict of interest, and supply chain, right, the expectation is that you have a reasonable pool of data in which you're able to look for and identify risk for these people and companies. I think when we talk about margins, identifying crucial risk information, whether it's allegations of corruption or human trafficking in a foreign language, or even an obscure regulatory release from a low-profile regulator. These things have historically been very difficult to find at scale because of cost limitations and a need to focus dollars only at the highest risk. Previously, at what we would call the margins of what was possible to discover is now the expectation. And the outcome of these expectations is that more risk is being eliminated from third-party populations and supply chain, a more effective program. The really challenging part historically has been, how do you do this? 5 years ago, I think it would have been impossible, but the tools are available to do this now. Tools that can identify risk at scale and then carry out risk mitigation so that business can proceed as usual.
So, Ren, we have had over the last 2 months, literally, starting on June 1 and then almost 30 days later on July 2nd, two very significant releases of information from the Department of Justice and SEC. On June 1, we had the 2020 update to the Evaluation of Corporate Compliance Program. And then on July 2nd, a massive release, the FCPA Resource Guide, second edition. And I was wondering, from your perspective, what do you believe these new updates, and in particularly the Resource Guide, mean for operationalizing compliance in the corporate setting?
Yeah, it's really quite incredible, but the Department of Justice and the SEC have once again really provided more guidance, more clarity as it relates to a couple key areas that are really important, I think, for the compliance world. Number one, resources and people matter in an organization when it comes to supporting a robust compliance program. These are easily examined by investigations from the regulatory bodies around the globe, and so we can figure out where are they spending money? Are they bringing the right people on? Are they the right resource folks? Is their budget to take on important new programs around the compliance program? So at a minimum, those things have to be lined up in a way that would make sense and are appropriate and measured for the business. Number two, there's a lot more discussion about investigations. And now I'm not suggesting that every matter needs to be escalated to an investigation, but certainly when and how you do that is going to be examined a little closer. And I also put in there, of course, root cause analysis. We're looking at a breakdown of the compliance program. Where did it happen? What happened? And how do we evaluate that? It's not just about the investigation and what the results are of that investigation. Really, what they focus on in the new guidance for 2020 is about, okay, great, you've conducted an investigation. What are you doing to improve your compliance program after you've conducted this examination? And how is that going to help the company look at risk differently? How are you going to mitigate risk differently? Those key investigations can be very helpful for how you really function as a compliance program, and also can show to the regulatory bodies that, hey, look, we had a problem, we investigated it, we escalated it correctly, we learned from those lessons, we made our program stronger. That is a key distinction excuse me, in the guidance, and it is really a smart way to think about taking an investigation and making something better out of it.
Aaron, if I could perhaps change the focus just a little bit to ask you, how or even why do you see chief compliance officers and indeed the entire corporate compliance function as setting ethical business standards for a corporation?
Yeah, I think it goes without saying, we're in a really interesting time in many ways for our clients and the people we talk to day in and day out. These are people who generally like to wear the white hat, trying to make sure that the way in which their company comports itself in the world is consistent with the ethical standards of its leadership. Regulatory requirements, which are always sort of more defined than those other pieces, have always been, but public pressure and regulatory pressure are forcing the integration of ethics and compliance officers into the day-to-day operations of businesses more than they have before. Harvard Business Review recently said that perceptions of a company's products are harmed by bad news about the supply chain as much as bad news about the company itself. Even when the quality of the product is not affected, who else but the chief ethics and compliance officers would be responsible for this? The great thing is that they now have a set of tools and technologies that can eliminate the cliche of compliance as a roadblock or as an impediment to business, right? This is now accelerate and further inform in a deeper way the business that can both protect the company and help it operate in a much more ethical fashion.
Gentlemen, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode, but I was wondering if our listeners wanted any more information on the topics that you have raised in this podcast, where could they go?
So we regularly contribute to the FCPA blog. Oh, sorry, Ren, go ahead.
Go ahead, Aaron. Now, go ahead.
We regularly contribute to the FCPA blog about white papers and hold roundtables for our clients and others who are interested in these topics. The best place to get information is by either visiting Exiger's website or any of our employees and colleagues on LinkedIn. We really appreciate the time, Tom.
Thank you so much, Tom. Really appreciate it, and good luck to all the men and women who are so dedicated to the importance of compliance. It's really a critical need. Thank you.
I hope our listeners will join us for our episode 3, where we take a look at these issues in federal government and supply chain risk management. Gents, thanks again. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox again. I hope you enjoyed this special podcast episode sponsored by Exiger, where we're taking a look at third-party risk management and supply chain risk management. Check out Exiger at their website, www.exiger.com. It lists a lot of resources in the show notes from these two speakers, so check those out if you want any more information. I hope you'll join us again for our next episode in this special 5-part podcast series, from third-party risk management to supply chain risk management. Exiger on the evolution in supply chain compliance during COVID-19. This has been a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network.